Welcome to the Grand Theft World podcast, hosted and sponsored by the members over at grandtheftworld.com. Those are the members that keep us on the air every week. There's a lot of membership abilities and capabilities. We'll talk about that later in the show. Tonight, we're going to cover this past week in Grand Theft World history. We're going to be breaking open a whole lot of stories, smashing them into the historical context, providing you with the evidence, the artifacts, so you can understand what's actually going on, instead of having a fragmented mentality like most of the people who don't have an attention span long enough to watch an episode like this. We're going to have stories tonight like Fauci. He's been recommended for a little judicial prosecution. They're going to look in to see what he had to do with a little thing called COVID-19. Peter Daszak, EcoHealth, DARPA, they had some grants. They're hooking up some COVID, coronavirus, gain of function sort of stuff. He said it never happened. There's been a mountain of evidence on display in alternative media outlets such as this one and most of my colleagues. Now the public is starting to come around, as it were. Rand Paul is no longer the person out there shouting in the wilderness. He's in the town square and he's making it loud.
Senator Rand Paul is coming for Dr. Anthony Fauci. The Kentucky Republican has referred the former White House advisor for criminal charges, potentially. Paul is demanding a perjury probe accusing Fauci of lying under oath during testimony before a Senate committee in 2021. Paul said in a statement, Dr. Fauci testified that the NIH does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. In a subsequent hearing, I warned Dr. Fauci of the criminal implications of lying to Congress and offered him an opportunity to recant his previous statements.
In July 2021, Fauci testified how his former department has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Senator Paul has also made an official criminal referral to Attorney General Merrick Garland. The Department of Justice has not responded to Paul's request yet. Here's some of the testimony in question that Paul is referring to.
Support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan.
Senator Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Do they fund Dr. Barrick?
We do not fund.
Do you fund Dr. Barrick's gain-of-function research?
Dr. Barrett does not doing gain-of-function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina, not
You don't think inserting
in
a bat virus spike protein that he got from the Wuhan Institute into the SARS virus is gain-of-function?
That is
You would
not
be in the minority because at least 200 scientists have signed a statement from the Cambridge Working Group saying that it is gain-of-function.
Well, it is not. And if you look at the grant and you look at the progress reports, it is not gain-of-function, despite the fact that people tweet that.
So do you still support sending money to the Wuhan Virology Institute?
We do not send money now to the Wuhan Virology
Do you support
Institute.
sending money? We did under your tutelage. We were sending it through EcoHealth. It was a sub-agency and a sub-grant. Do you support that the money from NIH that was going to the Wuhan Institute?
Let me explain to you why that was done. The SARS-CoV-1 originated in bats in China.
So part of this is a debate over what constitutes gain-of-function research. So that's how, Fauci will try to get out of this, say, what you're describing is not actually gain-of-function research. But the interesting thing, and the part of this where I think Fauci could theoretically actually be on the hook, is there is an email that has been uncovered subsequently from Fauci to his, health posse of advisors, where he let's put this tweet on the screen. This is a tweet from Phil Wegman, reporter we've had on the show. In there, the screenshot of the email where Fauci writes, the suspicion was heightened by the fact that the scientists in Wuhan University are known to have been working on gain-of-function experiments to determine the molecular mechanisms associated with bad viruses. So in this email, he himself describes the research being done there as gain-of-function.
Trump, is he going to be remanded to custody? He's the most dangerous guy in America, allegedly. And the Democrats, they gave he got his fingerprints, they got his mugshot. They didn't remand him to custody, but now they're having second thoughts. They're like, maybe we need to take this guy out of the race completely. We're going to get some news on that. Biden crime family, there's a whole laundry list. We'll cover that. January 6th has some interesting footage that's just been released. No, it's not from inside the Capitol. It's from inside the studios of Fox News. The formerly known as Tucker Carlson show was edited, was censored, and now that footage is leaked out. We saw a little bit of it last week, but Tucker has broken the internet this week, putting out more than people can handle. They're going crazy over it.
All right, folks, so no wonder deep state actors are panicking. The bombshell revelations coming out of this interaction are just insane. Not surprising, because they essentially confirm everything we already assumed and already knew, but just insane. Let's first start off with the intelligence aspect.
The United States military, and this gets really convoluted once you get into the response on January 6th and how I was delayed getting resources. You have the United States military, Secretary of Defense or Acting Secretary of Defense Miller and General Milley had both discussed locking down the city of Washington, D.C. because they were so worried about violence at the Capitol on January 6th. On Sunday and Monday, they had been discussing locking down the city, revoking permits on Capitol Hill because of the concern for violence. You know who issues the permits on Capitol Hills for demonstrations? I do. You know who wasn't told? Me. Instead, on January 4th, what does Miller do? He puts out a memo restricting the National Guard from carrying the various weapons, any civil disobedience equipment that would be utilized for the very demonstrations or violence that he sees coming. It just doesn't make any sense.
Wait. So the military says we're so concerned about potential imminent violence that we are considering shutting down the city. But at the very same time, they decide that the National Guard can't adopt an aggressive posture to protect the city.
They're deploying because they're going to be deploying National Guard to assist Washington, D.C. with crowd control at metros and some of the traffic control areas. But they put this out on January 4th, specific to January 5th and 6th. And this direction affected the National Guard in Virginia and Maryland. When I was begging for assistance on January 6th, they weren't allowed to respond at first. General Milley, we're now finding out, and it's not from me, this is from Carol Leonnig, investigative reporter with the Washington Post, has found that he was using data miner on his own, coming across intelligence.
Tell us what data miner is.
So data miner is an intelligence platform. It's not something your average citizen would have on their computer. I guess it goes in and does crawling across webs. I'm not really sure how it works.
Yes.
But it's not it's an intelligence platform. He's picking up intelligence talking about killing members of Congress and attacking the United States Capitol. And he's not telling me. He's telling select members of Congress. I mean, Carol Leonnig writes about it in her book. That's concerning as hell, because as the chief of police, there's a duty to warn there, and I should be told so I can take the necessary action. I don't know who else he was telling, but he sure wasn't telling me. I've done many national special security events, and this was handled differently. No, the intelligence, no jib, no coordination, no discussion in advance. It's almost like they wanted it to be watered down, the intelligence to be watered down for some reason.
You make this call immediately to the House Sergeant at Arms who reports, Mr. Irving, who reports to Nancy Pelosi. He
Correct.
says, I'll call Pelosi.
He says, I'm running up the chain.
Running up the chain, but that is the chain.
I hear you. I got you. I want to tell you exactly what he said.
So what happens then? Does he get back to you?
So for the next 71 minutes, I make the 32 calls to a number of agencies. 11 of those calls are follow-up calls. And look in the Senate combined report from 2001. They have a great infographic of the call after call after call after call. 11 times I call in the next 71 minutes going, where are we on the approval? Where are we on the approval? He goes, any minute now. Any minute. I'm going to get any minute. Finally at 2:09, 71 minutes later, 2:09, I'm finally given approval. Think about that. 71 minutes later, I immediately call Mike Stinger, say we've got approval. I was so pissed off, I made sure that the watch commander, I'm in the command center, I yelled to John Wisham, the lieutenant, that's my watch commander. I said, John, mark the time as 2:10. I finally got approval for the National Guard. I was that mad.
Here you have a guy on camera repeatedly saying, we're going to the Capitol.
We need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol.
And he's not in jail when people who didn't go into the Capitol are in jail? What do you make of that?
Again, that's something I actually address in the book. It's funny. There's a lot in here. So my concern with that, and I look at it from a chief of police point of view, is you have somebody that's down, and I believe he's right near the old executive office building on the 5th, the day before January 6th, talking to a group of people, talking about we have to get into the building. We have to get in the building. And then the next day to see him at what's called the Pennsylvania Avenue Gate. It's one of the two fence lines I had down at the West Front. And he's there, and he clearly sees the banner, the metal crowd control barriers that are up with the signs saying restricted, so he knows that's a restricted area. And he's up there, and you see him lean in, and he whispers in somebody's ear, and he covers his mouth in such a way so you can't read his lips or anything. Whispers in somebody's ear, and that person moments later is attacking my officers. That's suspicious as hell to me. It raised a lot of concerns.
What is that?
We also have the public sniffing out this Bill Gates profiting from the vaccines that he touted, but now he's moving on to maybe some other projects that he's out there. So he says the vaccines that he touted before, he made 20 times his return, 20-to-1 ratio. It's no longer the thing. And maybe there's a new thing coming down, like an inhalable vaccine.
Bill Gates, ladies and gentlemen, is if you don't know, he got to be the richest man in the world by helping people.
Yeah.
That's how you get to be. How do you get to be a billionaire? As I say, you get to be a billionaire by helping people.
A lot of the man's attacked a lot for being a good man. And he's going to pay out of his own pocket to darken the sun for us.
The many faces of Bill Gates, a popular conspiracy. Oh, wait. Should we just play it? I say we just play it, right? Here we go.
Given billions for vaccines and save millions of lives. If you just kind of invert that and say, no, we're trying to make money for vaccines and not trying to save lives, that's a popular conspiracy theory.
Wait a minute. The fact that Bill Gates is trying to make money is a conspirae theory now? Capitalism is a conspiracy theory now, Kurt? Did you know this?
Billionaires make their money, make a lot of money, and they're really into it.
So the richest man in the world, it's a conspiracy theory that he's into making money.
Will you hear his specific words, though? He goes that I'm doing it just to make money and not to help people.
Oh, so he is doing it to make money, not just to make money.
Yeah, he said it in some wormy ass way to where it's like, I'm sure it's still a lie, even technically not a lie. I'm sure.
So okay, now listen to what he says. So he just said he's not doing this to make money off vaccines. This is all about because he cares about people. Okay, ready?
$10 billion in vaccinations over the last 2 decades.
He invested $10 billion in vaccinations over the last 2 decades. How much did you make?
And you figured out the return on investment for that. And it kind of stunned me. Can you walk us through the math?
It's over a 20-to-1 return. So if you just look at the economic benefits, that's a pretty strong number compared to anything else.
Compared to anything else. His investment in vaccines, the richest man in the world, said it's done better than any other investment he's ever made. 20-to-1 return.
He didn't just do it for that, Joe. You didn't listen to what he said. The conspiracy is that he just did it for that. And not because he's a good man who used to hang out with Epstein.
Yeah. Like all decent people do. Here we go.
We're trying to make money for vaccines, and that's a popular conspiracy theory.
Over a 20-to-1 return.
We also need to fix the 3 problems with vaccines. The current vaccines are not infection blocking. They're not broad, so when new variants come up, you lose protection. And they have very short duration.
So screw those. But guess what? He's got a new thing. He already cashed in his money from those vaccines. So now he's got a new vaccine. What is it?
We think we can also have very early in an epidemic a thing you can inhale that will mean that you can't be infected, a blocker, an inhaled blocker.
An inhaled blocker. And who's making that? Oh, these people in India. That's the place he said they couldn't do anything, remember? He said they can't make their own vaccine. They can only... Oh, and who's funding it? Bill Gates is funding it. So the new inhaling thing you sniff, that he's funding that now. So he left the old vaccines because he cashed in his stock. And now he's onto this new thing. And the old thing that he cashed his stock in, it's not good. He doesn't like it anymore. It's got a lot of problems. This new thing's better. What? And is he invested in the new thing? You're fucking right he's invested in the new thing.
And alongside of that, the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, yes, that's Fauci's organization over there. They have successfully inoculated people, vaccinated people with mosquitoes as syringes, which is a Bill Gates idea. It's almost like these guys, Gates and Fauci, like they had an album that they put out a couple years ago. What was that called? Oh, COVID-19. So we're going to take a look at these stories because these people are serious. They're well funded. And Gates also wants to block out the sun. So maybe we should look at his Messiah complex as well.
So get this. An NIH-funded study just vaccinated humans using genetically modified mosquitoes. If this doesn't freak you out, I don't know what will. This study took place recently in Seattle. A group of researchers were looking to see how they could vaccinate people from malaria using these mosquitoes. And what they did, this study involved 200 mosquitoes biting humans. And the humans would put their arms in the little whatever thing, and the mosquitoes would come and bite them. I don't know why anybody would sign up for that, but apparently participants were paid about $4,000 to do this, to be bitten by mosquitoes. The mosquitoes carried with them a modified version of malaria. And that modified version it's like really mild. It doesn't really actually make you sick. But the idea is that when you contract this really mild version of malaria from these mosquitoes, that you can't even feel, you're basically asymptomatic. You end up developing antibodies to malaria, and you're therefore then vaccinated against malaria. And in the study, they said that they used mosquitoes, and they actually did end up with 3 to 5 vaccinations over the 30-day intervals. And they said that the mosquitoes gave minor versions of malaria that didn't make people sick, but gave them the antibodies. And the efficacy from those antibodies last a few months. So it's not like long-term vaccination by any means. So like every few months, I guess you'd have to be bit by one of these mosquitoes. Now, when asked, they said, we used mosquitoes like they're 1,000 small flying syringes. But when asked, well, why didn't you just use syringes, right? Like, why don't you just inject people, with their consent? I mean, obviously in this study, the people gave consent, but what are you going to do with this science, with this research is the big question. So you're going to release mosquitoes out into the wild that carry this mild form of malaria so that you can give people malaria and vaccinate them without their consent. Essentially, a government, I could imagine, would buy the batch of genetically modified mosquitoes and release it to its population, which then what happens to mosquitoes? They get inside of crates, they get shipped around the world, they go with people places, they get transported. So now you're going to vaccinate the entire world without the world's consent by using this science. I mean, what is the purpose of this science if it's not for that?
Vivek Ramaswamy questioned 9/11. A lot of people question 9/11. He's taken a lot of heat for it. I think that's bringing out more interesting evidence and facts that contradicts the official narrative of 9/11. We're going to take a look at that.
I want to ask you about something you said in an interview over the past day or so. Take a listen.
I don't believe the government has told us the truth. Again, I'm driven by evidence and data. What I've seen in the last several years is we have to be skeptical of what the government does tell us. I haven't seen evidence to the contrary, but do I believe everything the government told us about it? Absolutely not.
To be fair, you were asked if 9/11 was an inside job, and you tweeted out, do I believe our government has been completely forthright about 9/11? No, Al-Qaeda clearly planned and executed the attacks, but we have never fully addressed who knew what in the Saudi government about it. We can handle the truth. Do you believe 9/11 was an inside job?
I don't, okay. but I do believe
you don't know
the
about
government
the Saudis' role.
Exactly right.
As the
and I don't think we've ever gotten straight answers about that.
As Republicans are criticizing the Biden administration for their policy towards Saudi Arabia, and you're going to talk about foreign policy, do you think it's the right thing to go down this kind of asking questions about this on a foreign policy perspective, diplomacy-wise, in this venue?
So, Brett, I come at it from the perspective of demanding truth from the government overall. I think that is a top issue right now. The truth about how our money is actually being spent in Ukraine. The truth about the Shooter's Manifesto in Nashville, where I was earlier today. A government that pledged to release that manifesto, but which has not. The truth about the COVID-19 lab origin. So for me, this is the first time I'd actually talked about the 9/11 issue.
And you were asked about it, to be fair.
I was asked about it directly. But this is part of the broader spirit of this campaign is we live in a moment where the government tells us we can't handle the truth. Actually, I believe we, the people in this country, we can handle the truth. And we live in a moment where we demand the truth. That's why we fought an American Revolution, to say that we, the people, determine how our government governs, and they're accountable to us, not the other way around. And that rejects the old world vision that it is a small group of elites that decide behind the palace halls what's right for everybody else at large. So that's actually a fundamental theme for this campaign, Brett.
And last but not least, in this week in Grand Theft World history, we had a mega merger. I was watching this Crowder re-platforming type of thing that was going on. It was all going along very usual. Here's Brian Callen. Here's the people he's touted. But then there's a mystery guest at the end. And it turns out Mr. Crowder has cut a deal with Mr. Jones, and Alex Jones is going to be part of Mug Club, which is a real coup for Crowder, who resisted the not hostile takeover by the Daily Wire, but, you know, get in line and you'll get paid Daily Wire offer that he had. He's gone out on his own. We're going to take a look at this spectacle, this combining. This is the opposite of a bifurcation. It's like a fusion that's happened in alternative media. It's sure to bring about more news like what you're about to see right here.
This is a man who was removed from the platforms of Apple, Spotify, Google, Facebook, Meta, X, whatever the hell it is, all on the same day. But there's no coordination. It's just coincidence. And there were, by the way, many people back then who said, well, that's just him. He's too extreme. That's just an isolated case. It won't happen to me. Well, are you paying attention now? And so people who we all expect to stand in the line of fire, who are supposed to be brothers in arms, tucked tail and ran. They struck plea bargains with the platforms who, for a period of time, would punish anyone who even hosted him as a guest. This is the canary in the coal mine. These people at these big tech platforms, they tell you that they'll never come for you, that you can keep your tens of millions in revenue or millions that you make from their platforms. And really all that means is that if you're lucky, really lucky, they'll kill you last. Well, they tried to kill this next man first. And if he's honest, he'll tell you they almost did. They did a lot of damage. But if there's one thing you can say about this man, love him or hate him, is that he will fight for this country with every last breath in his body, and he just won't die. So it's with as much pride that I can convey, and as much surprise, by the way, as you, in landing this white whale, the #1 draft pick, without a doubt out there, that for the first time he will launch his subscription network exclusively under the Mug Club umbrella, starting with his new Friday show on August 18th. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Jones, everybody.
Thank you. Listen, I want to thank everybody tuning in. I want to thank everybody tuning in right now, but I want to be deadly serious here. I've not been this excited ever! Woo! Yeah, Mug Club, baby! Wow! But I want everybody watching, that means on InfoWars everywhere, to be part of this revolutionary act. You want resistance? You want somebody to stand up? You want somebody to fight? Go now to the Mug Club. Go now, ladies and gentlemen, and use the promo codes that are there to get a month off. Do it now. Go to Mug Club. Take action, because the globalists want war. They want to destroy us. Well, guess what? We didn't start this fight. We don't want it. But if you want to fight, you better believe.
All right, so tonight, let's kick it off with Luke Rudowski from wearechange.org and thebestpoliticalshirts.com, his report from earlier today. And then we're going to break open this past week's news. Stay tuned.
I wish politicians would look out for minors, and not just minors on an island somewhere. Lord, we got folks in the street, ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. Lord, it's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with an whole soul. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just want to have total control. Want to know what you think, want to know what you do, and they don't think you know but I know that you do, 'cause your dollar ain't and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men, North the rich men.
Wow, I wish politicians wouldn't just look for minors on an island somewhere. Very powerful lyrics from a very powerful song that truly does resonate with the majority of America, and that's why it's under attack by the corporate media today.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come